Hi everyone. This is a recording just to help you with understanding both the first literature sack but also the poem that we'll be studying. The first literature sack is done over 3 periods this week, and this first session is really a close reading, or a chance for you to undertake a close reading of W.H. Auden's When I Walked Out One Evening, which is the poem that we'll be studying. Just to go through, first of all, the sack and what it entails. You can read this yourself and you'll have a hard copy of this sheet. So you should be able to read along and follow along and perhaps make some notes in the margins while I talk about it. So essentially the task is to roll together the various skills that you've been developing over the last few weeks and undertake a close reading of the poem, consider your own interpretation and then position that towards one of the perspectives that I offer. Like with the Ode to a Nightingale task, your own interpretation is really what I'm interested in, and the perspectives that I've offered are there as a launching point. So the comment that I've made here, the perspectives that are there are really just to prompt your agreement, disagreement, clarification, and reflect on your own interpretation. You can think about the theoretical position that's being offered, but your response to the poem or discussion of the poem does not necessarily have to capture one of those, but obviously they will push you in a more complex and interesting direction. So more importantly, what I want you to do is to discuss your insights into the poem, okay, using specific reference to and discussion of the literary features and linguistic devices used by the poet to construct meaning. That's what literature is all about, that specific detail and discussion. And, you know, in this case, discussion of the poetry, the actual poetic qualities of the writing. Okay, so it says there we will have read together the text and closely annotated it. Because I'm not able to be in class for the first lesson of this week, that's why you have this video, and obviously the nature of the annotation of the poem that follows on the subsequent pages is also there to support you with the sort of observations and discussions that I would have made in class were I able to be there with you. These notes and all of this document will be available to you in all 3 sessions of the sack, so by all means make use of them. So today is to understand the poem, to understand the sack, and then it says the first session of the sack proper, because really Tuesday's lesson is a close reading lesson. It's not really the sack, it's just a preparation lesson. But the first session, which is Wednesday's class, you'll have some time to consider the prompting statements and to plan some points that you'd like to raise to sort of use that planning process that I went through last week on the sample essay for Ode to a Nightingale, to plan out an essay, to explore your interpretation, to think about the points you'd like to raise, and think about the sorts of evidence that you would like to use to justify those points. And then the last lesson of the week, the third lesson of the week, is your time to write the essay. You are only able to use hard copy material in the sack, particularly in the final lesson, I should say. So in this lesson, you can use your iPad and whatnot. In the first lesson, you can also do that, but by the third lesson, so in the writing lesson, which is this second lesson here, you'll see here that it is only hard copy material. Okay, it says you'll have access to the story. That should be poem. This is just an older version that I've edited and missed that mistake, sorry. But you'll need to spend 80 minutes writing your essay in that time. There isn't a required word length for this particular essay stipulated by VCAA. but I've suggested that you're aiming for about 800 to 1,000 words. That's about 6 paragraphs, or 3.5 to 4 pages at a normal handwriting. Okay, but certainly if you're short, there won't be any penalty automatically applied. It'll just be that you may not have explored the ideas in enough depth, and that's not an uncommon error for people to make in literature, so perhaps just think about that. Make sure you're pushing your evidence far enough. The perspectives that you might like to consider in terms of what you're going to talk about in this essay are offered here. They won't make much sense to you now. You'll need to come back and read those later once you've read the poem, and that's fine. But as I said, you need to be aware that you don't have to use them, but I would strongly suggest that using them will make you write a better, more complex and more interesting essay. Okay, well, let's skip over. We won't look at the criteria too much, but I'd encourage you to have a read, as I did the other day, with the at standard, which is what everyone should be able to do. And you can see there that it talks about developing a personal response, understanding that you can form an interpretation, talking about the language devices. It looks at the ideas or concerns. So these are the human or philosophical or social comments that are being raised in the text, how that might be interpreted by the reader, and obviously writing well. As we move up into the, say, well above standard, for instance, your reading should be more comprehensive, meaning you should be covering more of the text in more detail. Your understanding should be more sophisticated or insightful, and using the theoretical perspectives, using the one of the 4 prompting statements up above will help you to get there. More understanding and specific discussion of language devices, particularly the poetic devices, will get you up to this level. Showing a very, very complex and thorough knowledge of the ideas that are being explored about society or personal qualities, that will get you there as well. And of course, writing incredibly well. So great use of vocabulary, no mistakes, spelling mistakes and grammar and all that sort of stuff. Choosing the right word to be clear and precise in terms of your expression will get you up to that top level. Okay, W.H. Auden is an English poet, and this poem was written in 1940, so it's very early in his career. And I'm not going to read through all of these notes, but he was, writing during the war, obviously, so a fairly dark time. As I walked out one evening is, as it says there, one speaker's observations and thoughts during an evening stroll, but it takes a fairly dark twist. It's a fairly unsettling and dark poem, and I think probably the best bet is, the best way to explain it is that he sees 2 lovers on his walk, and it prompts him to start thinking about the nature of love and the idea of time and the idea that things are fairly fragile, and the idea that things are perhaps going to disappear in time, and that we can't change that. So, like we did with Ode to a Nightingale, what I'll do is I'll read the poem through once now, and then what I would encourage you to do is to actually pause this and go back into sector. And I've inserted into the sector lesson today a video of someone else reading the poem, which is more theatrical than my reading, and then come back to this video, or actually I'll make a second video, come back to me and we'll go through some of the close reading material. So here's my reading. As I Walked Out One Evening by W.H. Auden. As I walked out one evening, walking down Bristol Street, the crowds upon the pavement were fields of harvest wheat, and down by the brimming river I heard a lover sing, under an arch of a railway. Love has no ending. I'll love you, dear, I'll love you, till China and Africa meet, and the river jumps over the mountain, and the salmon sing in the street. I'll love you till the ocean is folded and hung up to dry, and the 7 stars go squawking like geese about the sky. The years shall run like rabbits, for in my arms I hold the flower of the ages and the first love of the world. But all the clocks in the city began to whir and chime. Oh, let not time deceive you, you cannot conquer time. In the burrows of the nightmare, where justice naked is, time watches from the shadow and coughs when you would kiss. In headaches and in worry, vaguely life leaks away, and time will have his fancy tomorrow or today. Into many a green valley drifts the appalling snow. Time breaks the threaded dances and the driver's brilliant bow. Oh, plunge your hands in water, plunge them in up to the wrist. Stare, stare in the basin and wonder what you've missed. The glacier knocks in the cupboard, the desert sighs in the bed. The desert sighs in the bed, and the cracks in the teacup opens, and a lane to the land of the dead, where the beggars raffle the banknotes, and the giant is enchanting to Jack, and the lily-white boy is Aurora, and Jill goes down on her back. Oh, look, look in the mirror, oh, look in your distress. Life remains a blessing, although you cannot bless. Oh, stand, stand at the window, as the tears scold and start. You shall love your crooked neighbour with your crooked heart. It was late, late in the evening, the lovers they were gone, the clocks had ceased their chiming, and the deep river ran on. So I'll just point out a few very basic things in this poem to you before you listen to the other better reading. This part of the poem is the speaker, assumed to be the poet, assumed to be Auden, speaking himself. But then what you'll notice is that he hears a lover sing, and then we hear the words of the lover just to hear. So the words of the lover are very positive, they're very uplifting, they're very romantic. And then we come back to Auden, or the speaker of the poem, the poet, and he says, but the clocks in the city began to whir and chime. And then a lot of the rest of the poem really is the clocks or time in the form of clocks speaking. And really that's all the rest of the poem here. So the poem actually has 3 speakers. It starts with the first person speaker, so the person who's walking out one evening, the I that's referred to in the title. The second speaker is the lover that he hears singing. And then the third speaker is a disembodied metaphysical voice, suggested to be time, offering a warning to the lover, replying almost to the lover's promises at the start of the poem. And then at the very last stanza, we return to the first speaker, which is presumed to be Auden. So you've got this page as a hard copy. What I would suggest is up here next to the beginning of the poem, record your initial interpretation or your initial reaction. How did it make you think, feel? What's your response to it after that first reading? And then listen to the second video, the theatrical reading of the poem on Sector, and then come back to my next video, which is talking about the close reading.